All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We love doing these shows where we can really, dig into some of the sources you guys send in, like you
Mm.
provide the material, and we go through and pull out what we think are the most interesting pieces and try to, deliver some insight.
Yeah, basically we just try to unpack it all, kind of highlight what's really important, what might actually be, game changing for you.
Yeah, for sure. So today we're looking at a piece. It's called 13 Secret Exercises of Physique Champions by Dennis B. Weiss. And this
Yeah.
was originally published on criticalbench.com.
Critical Bench, solid website.
Yeah, yeah, and it looks like this was way back in 2003, um, and we were also looking into Dennis Weiss, just kind of who he was, and he's got a really interesting background. He was a power bodybuilder. They called him the Yukon Hercules.
That's a pretty badass nickname.
It is, yeah, and he was like really connected to the whole world of bodybuilding and fitness magazines back then. Like we were looking at some of his bios, and it seems like he was writing and contributing to a ton of them.
Oh, yeah, makes sense. If you're going to be writing about secret exercises, you probably got to have some serious street cred in the iron game.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today. Like, what are these unique training methods that physique champions used? We're talking about the kind of stuff that goes beyond, your standard squats and bench presses.
Right, the stuff that's not in every beginner's guide. So basically, we're trying to see if there are any really actionable ideas we can pull out of this piece and maybe offer you a different way of thinking about your own training, kind of a fresh perspective.
Exactly. So Weiss talks about this concept of unusual exercises for unusual results, and that's what
Mhm.
we're going to dive into. So the first exercise he talks about, it's called the measured movement power deadlift. And this is based on something he calls the wooden plank concept.
Okay, the wooden plank concept. Interesting. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, yeah, it's actually pretty cool. So the idea is that you load the bar with more weight than your one rep max.
Okay, hold on. More weight than your one rep max. That sounds intense.
Yeah, yeah, it is. But here's the catch. You're not lifting it from the floor. You're only lifting it from about knee height. So you set up these wooden planks and the barbell rests on them.
Oh, so that's where the wooden planks come in. I was picturing something completely different, like doing deadlifts on actual wooden planks for some reason.
Right. That would be pretty challenging, to say the least.
Mm.
But yeah, this way you can actually start with more weight than you could normally handle from the floor.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like even though it's heavier, the shorter range of motion makes it doable, at least initially.
Exactly. And Weiss actually tells this really interesting story in the article about how he got introduced to this concept. So back in the early 70s, he was stuck at a 500-pound deadlift. He couldn't seem to get past it. So he reached out to this guy named Ernest F. Cottrell. This guy was like this legendary bodybuilding and powerlifting coach.
Wow, so like old school iron guru. Got it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And Cottrell actually sent Weiss a mail order program. Can you imagine that? Like, no internet, no YouTube tutorials, just a handwritten program in the mail.
That's pretty wild. Back in the day, you had to work for that knowledge, no quick Google searches.
I know, right? It's pretty awesome. Anyway, so this program was called Power Deadlift Specialization, and the goal was to help Weiss bump up his max by about 10%.
10%. That's pretty significant, especially when you're already lifting heavy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So if we're talking, someone listening who's pulling around, say, 400 pounds, the aim would be to get you up to 440.
Okay, so what was the secret sauce? What did this mail order program actually look like?
Well, first of all, Cottrell was big on frequency. He recommended doing deadlifts twice a week, typically on Monday and Thursday, though Weiss said sometimes he would switch it up to Tuesday and Saturday.
2 times a week. Man, that's some serious dedication to the deadlift.
Yeah, but he also stressed that if you're focusing on deadlift strength, you need to keep your squat and bench press work at a maintenance level.
Yeah.
Like just enough to maintain your strength, but not enough to interfere with your recovery from the deadlifts.
Got it. So really prioritizing that deadlift.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so the actual deadlift workout itself, it starts with what Weiss calls conventional deadlifts. He suggests doing 2 sets of 6 reps using the weight you can normally lift for 10 repetitions, basically your 10 rep max.
Okay, 2 sets of 6 with your 10 rep max. Got it.
But, and this is where it gets interesting, there's a couple of little twists.
Twists? Like what?
So at the very top of the lift, when you're at lockout, you're supposed to actually shrug your shoulders up and back and kind of bend your arms slightly and hold that for a count of 2.
Oh, interesting. So it's like an extra squeeze at that top to really engage those traps and upper back.
Exactly, yeah. And then as you lower the weight, you pause just off the floor, like The plates are just an inch or two off the ground, and you hold that for 2 to 3 seconds.
I see. So a controlled eccentric, no bouncing the weight off the floor.
Yeah, definitely not. It's all about control and time under tension.
Makes sense. And what about rest between sets?
Oh, yeah, he emphasizes taking 8 to 10 minutes of rest after these 2 sets.
Wow, 8 to 10 minutes. That's a lot of rest.
Yeah, it seems like a lot, but, you're going pretty heavy here.
True, true. Got to be fully recovered for the next part of the workout.
Okay, so then comes the measured movement power deadlift, which is where those wooden planks come in. You set them up so the barbell is resting at about knee height, right? And then you load the bar with 10% more than your absolute maximum single lift.
Whoa, hold on. Did you say 10% more?
Yeah, 10% more. Like, for example, if your max is 500 pounds, you would put 550 on the bar. Or if it's more like 300, you'd be looking at 330. So you're actually starting with a weight that you couldn't lift from the floor.
That's pretty wild. So what, you just like yank it up from that height?
Well, no, not exactly. The idea is to do 6 to 10 very controlled single repetitions, and you're taking 3 to 5 minutes of rest between each of those attempts.
So it's all about quality over quantity, making sure you're maintaining perfect form even with that crazy weight.
Exactly, yeah. And Vice says that even though it's more weight than you've ever lifted before, it often feels psychologically less intimidating because of that shorter range of motion.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're not staring down a full deadlift from the floor.
Right, right. But here's the really cool part, and this is what Cottrell was known for. After you do your sets, you start removing the planks.
You remove the planks, so like you're gradually increasing the range of motion.
Exactly. The idea is to remove one plank from each side every workout, although Vice mentions that he sometimes found it more sustainable to remove them every fourth workout.
I see. So you're slowly working your way down to a full deadlift. Pretty clever.
Yeah, it's like progressive overload, but with a range of motion instead of just the weight. And even once you get to the point where you're pulling from the floor again, Weiss stresses that you start the next cycle back at knee height.
So you keep repeating that process even as you get stronger.
Exactly. And then once you can deadlift your new maximum from the floor, you add another 10% to the bar and go through the whole process again. He even suggests taking a 2 to 3 month break from this particular exercise after you've done 2 cycles.
Yeah, a break is probably a good idea after putting your body through all of that. Give it time to recover and adapt.
Okay, so that's the main part of Cottrell's power deadlift workout, but he also includes a couple of other exercises.
Okay, what else is in there?
He recommends doing prone back hyperextensions, 1 to 3 sets of 25 reps, holding for 1 second at the top, and then stiff leg deadlifts from a box, 1 to 2 sets of 15 reps, with a 2 to 3 minute rest between sets.
So it sounds like some good accessory work to target the lower back, glutes, and hamstrings.
Yeah, exactly. And he even specifically points out the stretching benefits of the stiff-legged deadlifts. Like, they're good for flexibility as well.
Makes sense. It's always good to incorporate some stretching and mobility work into your routine, especially when you're lifting heavy.
And Vice has this little pro tip in there that I thought was really interesting. He says that this wooden plank concept isn't just for deadlifts. You can actually apply it to barbell back squats, where you start with your glutes just touching the planks at the bottom, and even supine barbell bench presses.
Huh. That's pretty cool. So you can essentially use this technique to strategically overload specific parts of any lift.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about getting creative and finding ways to challenge yourself beyond just adding more weight.
All right, so we've talked about the wooden plank concept, deadlifts twice a week, and these accessory exercises. Anything else?
Oh yeah, Weiss mentions that if you find that twice-a-week deadlift schedule too demanding, you can switch to an 8-day cycle. So you do the workout and then take 3 full days of rest before doing it again.
Yeah, that's a good reminder that you always have to listen to your body and adjust the training based on how you're feeling.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on to the next secret exercise. This one is called expander cable lat pulls.
Expander cable lat pulls. All right, lay it on me.
So this is all about working the latissimus dorsi, those big muscles in your back.
Lats. Yeah, the wings.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And he recommends doing this exercise immediately after your main compound back exercises, like, bent over rows or lat pull downs, things like that.
Okay, so like a finisher for the back.
Yeah, you could think of it like that. But he's very specific about the fact that just doing, regular expander cable lat pulls, like just pulling down and then letting go, isn't really going to cut it.
Flat, just doing straight sets, that's too basic.
Yeah, he says that's not going to give you significant results.
Yeah.
He has a much more nuanced technique.
Okay, nuanced. I like it. So what's the secret?
Well, first of all, you hold the cable overhead, and slightly in front of you with your arms just slightly bent.
Okay, so not a straight overhead pull. Got it.
Yeah, and you want to make sure you're using a cable that provides enough resistance that you can't just easily pull the handles all the way down.
Right, gotta have some tension in there. So what's the movement like?
So you pull the handles apart and down to a certain point, and he calls this point A.
Okay, like a stopping point.
Yeah, and then you relax just a little bit so your hands come back up maybe 4 to 5 inches, and then you immediately try to pull past A, like 3 to 5 really short movements within that small range.
Oh, interesting. So it's like a pulsing motion, right?
Exactly, yeah, like you're really focusing on squeezing the lats and maintaining tension in that small part of the movement.
Makes sense. Hitting those muscles from a slightly different angle.
Exactly. And then as you get stronger, you progress to pulling the handles further down to a point he calls B. And the final stage is to actually straighten your arms at the end and pull down and back so the cables are tight across your upper chest and you're really squeezing your lats.
Okay, so there's like stages to this. You start with those short pulses, then go for a greater range of motion, and then finish with a full contraction.
Exactly. And as you get stronger at each stage, you increase the resistance by adding another expander cable.
Got it. So it's like a built-in progression system.
Yeah, pretty cool, right? And he recommends doing 4 sets of 5 tries immediately after your other back exercises.
Wait, tries? What's a try?
Oh, yeah, each try is those 3 to 5 short pulls we talked about.
Oh, okay, got it. So it's not just a straight set of 5 reps, it's 5 sets of those pulses.
Exactly, yeah. And he also mentions that you can do this at the very end of your back workout to really exhaust the lats, or even before you do your barbell lat exercises as a way to pre-fatigue the muscles.
I see. So you can use it as a finisher or a pre-exhaust.
Exactly. And if you're thinking of giving this a shot, he actually gives the website where you can buy these expander cables.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Which website?
It's www.ironmind.com, and you want to go to their online store, then training gear, and then cables.
Awesome. I'll check it out. All right. What's the next secret exercise?
All right, the next one is secret exercise #4, Gironda prone dumbbell rowing. This is a good one for targeting the outer part of the lats.
Gironda prone dumbbell rowing? I'm not familiar with that one. Is it like a regular dumbbell row just lying face down?
Well, he actually starts by describing the setup for prone barbell rowing on a high bench.
Prone barbell rowing on a high bench. Okay, that's a new one.
Yeah, so you take 2 sturdy boxes about 18 to 24 inches high and put them about 26 inches apart, and then you put a bench on top of those boxes.
Oh, so the boxes are like makeshift legs for the bench?
Exactly, and then the barbell goes underneath the bench.
I see. So you're basically lying face down on the bench and pulling the barbell up to your back. Got it.
Right, but he's very clear about making sure that this structure is very stable. Like, you don't want the boxes wobbling around while you're lifting heavy weight.
Yeah, that makes sense. Safety first.
Definitely. And he also mentions that you might need to adjust the height of the boxes depending on the size of your weight plates.
Right, because the plates can't hit the floor. Got it.
So for the barbell version, he gives you a few different grip options. You can do a narrow grip, about 16 inches, a medium grip, which is 26 inches, where your arms are kind of in line with your shoulders, or an ultra-wide grip, which is 36 inches.
Okay, so you can target different parts of your back by changing your grip. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then the movement is basically pulling the barbell up to the underside of the bench and towards the middle of your abs. He says to keep your wrists straight and your elbows kind of close to your sides at the top and hold for a count of 3 before slowly lowering the weight.
Okay, sounds straightforward enough. So what's the dumbbell version like?
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. This is Vince Gironda's dumbbell variation. Instead of the barbell, you hold a heavy dumbbell in each hand with your knuckles facing forward. And then you pull the dumbbells up, flaring your elbows out to the sides until your upper arms and elbows are lined up with your shoulders. So your forearms are basically at right angles to your upper arms.
Okay, I'm visualizing it. Elbows out, dumbbells up. Got it.
Yeah, and here's the really unique part. As you
Huh?
pull the dumbbells up, you also lift your head and legs off the bench, so you're creating this kind of crescent shape with your body. Only your stomach is touching the bench.
Whoa, so you're adding in a whole body movement here. It's not just an isolated row.
Right. And at the same time, you're squeezing your shoulder blades back and down, holding that for 2 seconds.
Oh, wow. So there's this whole element of back and shoulder engagement as well.
Exactly. And then while you're still holding the dumbbells up at the top, you actually move your upper arms back alongside your body and hold that for another 2 seconds.
Oh, interesting. So there's like a 2-part squeeze at the top. First you pull up, then you pull back.
Yeah, exactly. and then you lower the weights back down. Weiss mentions that you can rest the dumbbells on the floor between reps if you need to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Those sound like pretty tough reps.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then there's one more little pro tip he throws in there. For the barbell prone row, he suggests using a cambered bench press bar.
A cambered bar. Why that
He
way?
says it allows for a greater range of motion because of the curve in the bar.
Ah, that makes sense. So you can get a deeper stretch and a fuller contraction.
Exactly. And of course, he recommends using chalk to make sure you have a good grip.
Always good advice when you're lifting heavy.
All right, so we've gone over 3 of Weiss's secret exercises so far. What are your thoughts on them?
Honestly, I'm really impressed. They're definitely not your typical cookie cutter exercises. He's really emphasizing these unique techniques and subtle tweaks to really challenge the muscles in new ways.
Yeah, and it's not just about, lifting the most weight possible. It's about targeting specific muscle fibers, controlling the movement, and really focusing on the mind-muscle connection.
Exactly. And it really highlights the fact that you don't always need fancy equipment or complicated programs to see results. Sometimes it's about taking those basic movements and adding in a few strategic adjustments.
Absolutely. And that's something you guys can think about as you're listening. Like, how can you take these principles and apply them to your own training? Could you try that wooden plank concept with some of your main lifts? Or experiment with different grips and tempos to see how they affect different muscle groups?
Yeah, and don't be afraid to get a little creative. Try things out and see what works best for you.
Exactly. And remember, we've only covered 3 of the secret exercises in Vice's article. There are 10 more waiting to be explored. So if you're curious about the rest of them, we encourage you to go and check out the original article on criticalbench.com.
Yeah, and let us know what you think. What other hidden gems can you uncover? Maybe you'll discover your own secret exercise that takes your training to the next level.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Dennis Weiss's 13 secret exercises of physique champions. We'll catch you on the next one.